My grandma is currently sick. A few weeks ago, she was, we first noticed that she wasn't quite well when she tried to get up from her chair and she felt this stabbing pain in the right side of her chest. So we had to physically, pick her up and lift her. Well, actually, no, we didn't lift her. We supported her as we helped her make her way back to her bed. And then we called the paramedics to come round and take a few tests. That was her first trip to the hospital. And since then, she's been sort of in and out and back and forth. But a week ago, she was admitted to the hospital. Sorry about that. My phone alarm just went off. So, anyway, where was I? Where was I again? Oh yeah. So about a week ago, she was admitted to the hospital, and she's been there, and she remains there even now. It turns out she has gallstones. Now, from what I understand, I've seen a couple of videos on gallbladder and gallstones, and apparently they are some of the most painful things that any person alive can experience. I didn't go to medical school, and my memory of gallstones isn't exactly perfect, but I think it's to do with lifestyle and dietary factors. It's when there's a buildup of calcium, I think, in the kidneys near the urethra. It's when the calcium builds up and forms these little crystals, which then become so big that they can't fit through the urethra. And that causes a lot of agony and discomfort. So what they've done is, currently, they've got her in the hospital. They're trying to inject her with chemicals that will dissolve the gallstones so that she'll get better. However, the gallstones have been there for so long that they've caused an infection. So they're trying to fight off the infection first. So they're pumping her with antibiotics and sodium. And poor grandma, she's been in a lot of pain recently. She's they've kept her sedated with drugs like morphine, but she's been having these lurid nightmares with morphine and seeing these horrific visions, which, to be honest, I didn't even know was possible. I've been put under the knife before. I got appendicitis when I was 19. I don't remember seeing anything like that. I don't remember seeing any nightmarish hallucinations like that. But apparently it's gotten to the point where she's explicitly requested that they don't put her under morphine anymore. So she's currently in the hospital, and we all want the best for her. We all want her to come out of this alive and well again. But the longer she spends in there, the less sure I am that she's going to come out. Because I keep hearing news from my mum and from my aunt and from everyone else who pops in and visits her, that things just seem to keep getting worse. Like, she's had a number of minor strokes in the hospital. Luckily, none of them have been serious. None of them have caused serious lasting damage, like with any of the patients that I visit as part of my job as a care worker. I mean, because if you want to have a stroke, the perfect place to have it is in the hospital, where they can immediately give you treatment right after the fact and stop any lasting damage. But I mean, she's 93 years old. She's not going to live forever. It's amazing that she's managed to live to the age of 93. I mean, I had a patient, and I had a client who lived to be 90 and who passed away just in December of last year. My dad didn't even live to be 70. If you reach your 90s, if you're lucky enough to have made it all the way to the age of 93, I mean, your immune system just isn't what it used to be, isn't it? Anything, even a minor shock to your health system, can be fatal. And part of me, of course, I want Grandma to live as long as possible. I want her at least to live to the age of 95. Because, as I've said before, the record holder in my family for having lived the oldest time is my great-grandfather on my mother's side. Blub Forsyth. He lived to be 95. And as far as I'm aware, no one in either side of my family has ever lived past that age. So it would make sense if she lived to be 95 and dropped off. And obviously, death is a part of life. There's no sense in grieving for someone who is gone when you just have to accept and realize that death is an inescapable part of life. It's the only certainty we have. There's sort of a comfort in knowing that everyone dies eventually, and it gives some certainty. And life is full of uncertainties, but death is certain, and I think there's a calming reassurance in that. But I love my grandma so much, and I want to see as much of her as I can before she disappears from my life, before she disappears from the planet. She's one of the best cooks in the world. My grandma makes the finest roast dinners and roast lunches. She spoils me rotten. Another thing I regret is years ago, I would have loved to have introduced her to my wife and maybe my children, and she could have smiled at my children and become a great-grandmother, but I don't think that's going to happen. Although luckily, she can die in the comfort of knowing that she is now a great-grandmother, because some of my cousins have gotten married and now have children, so it's not all bad. It's kind of hard for me to rationalize. I talk about antinatalism, but if you reach an incredibly old age, like the age of 93, one of the reasons you keep living is in the hope that you will keep propagating future generations who all stemmed from your bloodline. And there's something very mystical and very, very enchanting about that. And it's difficult to explain because if you're an antinatalist, then this probably doesn't make any sense, because all life is unconditionally suffering. But I don't believe that. I probably ought to make a video in which I flesh out my views on antinatalism, in case I haven't made it clear already. But I'm not an unconditional antinatalist. I don't believe that all life is inherently worthless, or not that it's not worth living. The only reason why there's a crisis, why so few people are having children now, is because the world is the way it is, and many people feel that they don't have any meaning or purpose in their lives. But that's not to say that life is inherently meaningless. And it's definitely not to say that if things had worked out differently, I wouldn't have loved to have one day shown Grandma some other great-grandchildren, gotten them to be introduced to her. But, well, anyway, the material reality of the situation is she might die. She might die quite soon. No one wants to talk about this. I never bring this up around my mum or my aunt. We're all telling ourselves we all want her to come out of the hospital alive and fresh and still kicking in for another couple of years. But the writing's on the wall. And it's just, if she were on the path to recovery, we wouldn't be hearing constant stories about her having one stroke after another in the hospital. She's, based on what I've heard, she's barely even lucid now. She doesn't take part in conversation anymore, and she's mostly asleep for most of the day. It just seems like she's fighting for dear life, and in a lot of ways it reminds me of how Dad used to be in his final days. Back on that very morning when we lost him, it didn't really occur to me until just after we'd helped lift him out of bed and clean the bed sheets, as we were getting ready to take him in the car over to the nearby hospital. It wasn't until he fell unconscious, he lapsed into unconsciousness, that it began to occur to me, we might be losing him. It might happen right now, this morning. It was a very strange and harrowing realization, but when that realization falls into your laps, part of you, I think, psychologically, you become captured by a sense of fate, acceptance. And that reminds me, another thing that I forgot to mention is, I mentioned earlier how one of my clients, one of my service users, her name was Joan, by the way, how she passed away in December of last year. And I distinctly remember the very last time that I visited her, which was in, when would this have been? The 19th of December or the 18th? I'd have to go back and flick back through my my work calendar to find out. But anyway, I remember, first of all, she was in a bad way. She was in a lot of pain. We were having difficulty moving her either side of the bed so we could do the freshening up and the pad change. And so it was difficult. It was getting increasingly difficult to move her. So we had to call a doctor and put her on special notice. But I remember her saying, "I'm gonna be gone soon. I'm not gonna live for much longer." And I playfully I chatted with her saying, "No, don't say things like that. We're gonna get you through the new year, and you're gonna be living life large just like you are now in the year 2025. But it just occurred to me, what if, this is a theory that's just occurred to me now, what if when you are at the point of death, when you're literally standing before the threshold of life and oblivion, you suddenly become consciously aware that the moment is happening? This is a theory that's just come to me recently, and I don't know, I've grown kind of attached to it. What if everyone secretly knows when they're going to die? It's not that you know the exact date right now while you think about it, but when the moment comes, you know it's coming, and it doesn't take you off guard. What if as your body is losing every last reserve of its strength, you become captured by a sense of destiny and fate, and you become fully cognizant of the fact that it's happening today, it's happening right now. I suppose there's something quite romantic and pleasant about it, because it means you stop fighting the inevitable. You become more, well, you accept your fate. Now, anyway, I digress for quite a bit, but the reason I brought up that anecdote is because the same thing happened with my grandma. This was about a week ago. This was before we sent her off to the hospital where she is currently. So it was, I think, would it have been last Friday or last Wednesday? I forget the exact day. I heard my mother reported while she was looking after her that she said, "Oh, I think I'm gonna die. I think this is it for me." Now, when somebody says that, when an elderly woman lying in bed in a lot of agony says that, you pay attention, because she probably knows something about the constitution of her body that you don't. So, if you knew that somebody in your life was going to disappear shortly, what would you do? I suppose the obvious answer would be you'd go over and visit them. You'd bring them flowers, you'd reminisce about all the times that you knew them. I've got lots of happy memories of my grandma. And another thing you'd do is you'd put together some kind of record of how they lived their life and all the things that they accomplished. And I regret that I haven't been able to do that, and I don't think I will, because she's not really in a talkative state right now. I don't think if I sat down with her and asked her questions about her early life, I don't think she'd be in the right headspace to answer questions. But I've had this little idea for a series of video projects where I sit in front of my grandparents, I ask them questions in a formal interview style, like on BBC or Channel 4, and I ask them what major events happened throughout their life and what they remember, what their perception of it is. Because both my grandparents, they're both war children. They were both born in the 1930s. They've been through and witnessed a lot of change, a lot of rapid change condensed in a very short time. And it's interesting to know what people who lived through it all have to say about it, how different things were back then. So this idea for a video project, I've done it. I've almost finished with my grandfather, with Papa. I've got nearly 3 hours worth of video footage. I just need to finish the transcript so that when he finally does shake off his mortal coil, I can be there at the funeral with all the facts and with a first-hand account of everything that happened in his life, so that I will know his life story better than most others do. But I don't think I'll be able to do the same with Grandma. And on the one hand, I feel a little upset, because I suppose I always thought that Grandma would live longer than my grandfather, because she's always been more mobile, she's always been incredibly active, she's always been busy, walking around, cooking. My grandfather needs a walking stick, but my grandma, on the other hand, she's perfectly mobile. I mean, she's hunched, she's got arthritis in her fingers, so 2 of her fingers can't be moved, and she's got an artificial hip. But she's still much better. She's a lot more functional than most of the clients, most of the service users who I visit on a day-to-day basis. And at the age of 93, no less. Like, if I ever live to 93, which I suspect I won't, I'd like my body to be in the same state that hers is, or was. But anyway, this is the situation I'm in. I think I'm going to lose my grandma. What do I do? What can I do differently to what I'm doing currently? I suppose one thing I can do is go over and visit her. Maybe I should. Well, I mean, go over and visit her. Make an unplanned visit, make an unscheduled visit, even though I don't have to. It costs money to park your car at the hospital, even for less than an hour, but maybe I should, because I might not get another chance. Anyway, that's, yeah, I thought I'd just make a video about that. Hope you guys are okay. This is Tracking. Take care, everyone.